Hello, today is Monday, December 1st. Welcome to episode 532 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. I'm joined today by founder and executive director Jamil and Jaffer, and senior fellows Morgan Vina and Jessica Jones. Jones, we're all thrilled you're a senior fellow now. Folks, it's either going to be a spicy Monday or a manic Monday. We are talking about Venezuela, which, for those of you who are not aware, is a very large country in South America. The U.S. has been assembling a kind of massive armada of ships, planes, and men and women under arms for possible action in Venezuela. The president and his cabinet have, of course, been striking at drug boats coming out of Venezuela. That has been much discussed over the weekend. In particular, one of the initial episodes may have involved a second strike by the U.S. against the survivors of the first strike on one of these alleged drug boats. That has been the term war crime has been bandied about. There appears to be congressional investigations ongoing in both the House and Senate, bipartisan investigations into this episode. President Trump has commented on it. Secretary of Defense Hegseth has commented on it. It seems to be developing almost on an hour-by-hour basis. President Trump has announced that later today, 5 o'clock this afternoon on Monday, December 1st, he will meet with his cabinet, his National Security Council, to discuss next steps in Venezuela. Over the weekend, there may have been an ultimatum delivered to President Maduro of Venezuela. By the way, Maduro, we should point out, lost an election a few months ago, a re-election election to Maria Corina Machado, who is arguably the legitimate ruler of Venezuela. She won the Nobel Peace Prize after that. There is also perhaps a no-fly zone over Venezuela, including for commercial aircraft. As declared by President Trump. He may have said this no-fly zone is going to last until March 1st, 2026. So there's a lot going on here. Morgan Vina, I want to go to you first. Congress has kind of stepped up here. Our perhaps third and fourth favorite committees, the Senate Armed Services Committee and the House Armed Services Committee, appear to be investigating this in a bipartisan fashion. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Congress has actually been paying attention to what's been going on in Venezuela now for, the past few months. It's their attention to this isn't anything new, but what we are seeing more this weekend than we have seen in the past is Congress really emphasizing its oversight role, particularly the House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee. They're conducting oversight reviews. They're seeking clarity on existing operational authorities, legal standards, and taking a closer look at the decision-making processes that are underway right now within the administration to conduct these strikes. And they are within their jurisdiction to do so. 100%, they should be doing this. And frankly, they should have been doing this, several months ago. What we are seeing now, though, is that, members of the committees are actually coming to the fore. They're going on, the Sunday, morning shows. We saw Don Bacon yesterday, who, by the way, is a gem of a human being and a retired general, Air Force general, I come out and question the Department of War's judgment in this respect. We also saw, Mark Wayne Mullen come out rather, defensively in favor of the administration. So obviously we've seen, stark divides along partisan lines here, but overall, the chairman, Mike Rogers and Roger Wicker are taking an active role in this. This is something I think we haven't seen before. It's a good thing. They should be taking a look at this. It is within their purview to do so. And ultimately, I think this is going to continue for weeks, if not months. I mean, as I think you noted earlier in the prep, this quote unquote airspace closure is going to be extend to March 1, 2026. So I don't think we are seeing an end to this issue anytime soon. With that said, Les, this situation is evolving. Things can change very quickly. They can either escalate or they can de-escalate. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, I expect that we will be revisiting this topic again in the near future.
Jamil Jaffer, you multiple times in your career have had the title of counsel, chief counsel, other types of counsel. You've counseled in a legal sense, people in the House, people in the Senate, people in the White House, other people in the executive branch. You teach at a law school. What the heck does this mean that there's a war crime, possible war crime?
Well, look, I mean, the question is whether these soldiers who were given orders, whether their orders were either unlawful or whether what they did in undertaking those orders was unlawful. And the question is, does it violate the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which implements at some level the certain provisions of international law, including the parts of the Geneva Convention that the U.S. Government has signed up to. So the question is, did somebody, the person giving the order or the person obeying the order, violate the law in some way by taking this alleged second strike? So first we have to know the facts, obviously. Was in fact there an order given to kill everyone on these drug boats? If that order was given, was it understood, and was it meant to mean if there are any survivors, kill them as well? If after the first strike, and if that's what was done, we don't know the facts. If that's what was done, then the question is, did that order or its implementation violate the law? And it seems like it could very well have. There's a very real possibility that either the order itself or the way it was carried out could have violated the law if, in fact, what had happened was people were unable to operate. They were essentially orders to combat. That means they'd given up. They were in the water. If you have people that are in the water and are swimming around, flailing around, they don't have access to any weaponry or the like, it is unlikely that it's consistent with U.S. military doctrine and U.S. military legal guidance to take a strike on somebody in that position. It's essentially somebody waving a white flag. And so, again, there's a lot of facts we need to figure out, but if that's the case, that could be a real problem for either the soldiers involved or the people giving the orders. In this case, appears to have been Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth.
Jones, we've learned some things this year. We learned that the Trump administration, at least for a time, was executing national security decision-making over a signal chat, which was unusual, to say the least. We also saw that the administration changed the National Security Council staff structure substantially from several hundred people down to many fewer people. That normally you would think that in a situation like this, where we're contemplating some sort of action with respect to Venezuela, as a lawyer might say, that you would have a kind of a staffing cocoon around that to enable decision-making that's proper for the United States. That decision-making structure is not at all what it used to be. It is much more streamlined, I think, is a positive way of looking at it. Disabled might be another way of looking at it. Do you think those two things are related to what we saw, this conversation we've been having over the weekend about that initial strike on drug boats coming out of Venezuela?
I think maybe it's because I spent so much time with my mom over Thanksgiving watching Lifetime movies. I'm going to bring some levity to this. I feel like we're in kind of a will they, won't they, kind of like rom-com situation where we're all kind of left wondering. And where usually, Jamil looks skeptical, but follow this, where usually folks warn about fog of war and bad decision-making caused by confusion, uncertainty, lack of information. I feel like the Trump administration leans into the fog of war and actually ratchets it up, hoping that gives them cover for decision making, because you can play things a couple ways. And it also gives them time to allow pressure here on Maduro to get out without having actually to act, right? So when you talk about streamlined decision making, I think it's a different question. I think they actually play into, let's sow some confusion amongst partners and allies and enemies so that they don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to maximize our flexibility. And maybe we maximize it enough that Maduro actually unilaterally decides to step down. You talked about an ultimatum that came this weekend. We heard about a call between Maduro and Trump that happened last week, where Maduro, is offering part of, Venezuela's stake in its oil, for basically allowing him to remain in power. Trump turned that down. And so to me, you talked about a meeting happening at 5 p.m. today. I think the Trump administration is seeing, okay, how much pressure can we put on by COB today so that we can see a change in the regime without actually having to do anything else? And that meeting might just get pushed till tomorrow if nothing happens, right? I think that we're kind of along for the ride. And I think both us as the American people and I think those in Venezuela, we're not really sure when action is going to happen.
Yeah, Les, just to chime in and build up what Jessica just said here, Uh, this issue of Venezuela and Nicolás Maduro is not one that just popped up overnight for the Trump administration. If you recall, the Trump administration, include in the first term, really supported, Juan Guaido, the then opposition leader, to replace Nicolás Maduro. We actually considered military action in Venezuela during the first Trump term. So this is something that I think President Trump has focused on for a while now. Now we see Marco Rubio as the acting national security advisor, Secretary of State. There is momentum here, and ultimately, I think that an ideal situation would be, Nicolás Maduro stepping down. Whether or not we've ratcheted up the pressure enough for him to do so, I think is too soon to tell. But this has been something that has been in the works for a long time. Obviously, Venezuela is a narco state, and it has been responsible for significant drug trafficking to the United States. So while I think a lot of the tactics here, in terms of how the Trump administration goes about combating and prosecuting this drug war, are questionable, and should rigorous oversight should be conducted. I don't think that there is any question or in anyone's minds that this is something that the Trump administration sees as a priority, and frankly, unfinished business from his first term.
All right. I want to talk about the congressional oversight that's going on here by the two armed services committees. I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic that the chair and the rankings are collaborating here in a bipartisan way on stuff that's important to the American people, to the U.S. government, for the way we operate. This is how the system is supposed to work. And it's providing an excellent lesson to our old friends in the foreign policy committees. And I hope they are watching this because, folks, the last time we had an armada of this size in the Caribbean was in 1994. We went into Haiti and removed the president of Haiti, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. Since then, Haiti has been a complete disaster, to the point today where it is basically total chaos on the streets of Port-au-Prince and other major places in Haiti. Drug gangs and other kinds of gangs control the countryside. It's a horrible humanitarian situation, and it's just a few miles from our borders. Complete catastrophe because we did not have a real plan to follow up on U.S. military action. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen in Venezuela, but it's certainly possible. Venezuela is many, many, many more people. It is the world's largest. It has the world's largest oil reserves. It is potentially one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and we cannot let it descend into chaos. So our oversight committees on the Hill, the foreign policy, I'm talking about Senate Foreign Relations Committee and House Foreign Affairs Committee, need to follow the example of their brothers and sisters there on the Armed Services Committees and get their act together and start looking at what the actual American interests are here and make sure that they're doing proper oversight. Because we need if we are in fact going to have military action in Venezuela, which seems likely, we need to have a real plan to make sure the day after is done the right way. And we're building something that is sustainable there. Okay. Oh, one more lightning round question. Jamil Jaffer, who is the best football team in the National Football Conference right now?
Obviously, the Los Angeles Rams, who had a little bit of a setback.
That is false. It is the Chicago Bears.
Oh, my God.
Who are the number one seed in the NFC at this moment because the Rams lost yesterday to the Carolina Panthers. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks always to Kelly Crowley, Taylor Lane, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Wednesday, December 3rd, for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. We're on YouTube. Check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.